What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. So I did want to do a second video on the Resourceful Affix Stat because I was like, you know what? Maybe testing that out on a highway probably isn't going to be the greatest way to do it. And I also did get a comment wanting me to test this out on like a racetrack, and I was like, you know what? That is a really good idea because let's be real, how much are you actually going to be braking on a highway? Probably not that often. Even though going like higher speeds around 200 plus miles an hour, this works insanely well. And I'm not going to lie here, I think Resourceful is actually going to be a great stat to run. So I was like, you know what, let's go jump onto the racetrack in a racing car. Jump on here and run Pure and Resourceful on it. By the way, guys, you know how this says 1,500 bucks to do it, 150 spare parts? Oh yeah, the price doesn't go up anymore. You know what's insane? It still costs a lot of money to get, different builds. I went back into this one here and actually set up this entire chemist set. Took me around $700,000 to get Resourceful. Not even kidding. But besides that, though, let's go jump on the racetrack here using the lovely Koenigsegg and see how Resourceful does on a racetrack. Now for this, guys, I figured the best way to do it is to basically go through all of my nitrous and then go a bit faster and brake, giving me more nitrous, which is also what the perk does. But nonetheless, guys, I am also running the regular driver perk on top of it because I did already test it out. I will leave a tag on the screen if you want to check that one out on the highway. Before this, though, I'm now going to do like a regular run around the track here. So let's see. Let me go through all my nitrous around 200 miles an hour. Now, the big thing here is on a racetrack, you're obviously going to be, encountering turns and also most likely being able to turn more often because, there is turns on a racetrack. And you're not going to be racing on the highway basically on like full straightaway. So here's a big turn. Hitting my brakes around 200 miles an hour there, slowing down. So it went right up to around half on the nitrous there. Let's speed up again here to the next turn. Now, this is a bigger turn on this side. I can also go around again and hit that one. I should probably turn the tags off so I don't keep hitting them. So right here, guys, slowing down at 200 miles an hour around this turn. Being able to go around that one. So I got a little more nitrous from that. Now you can obviously use it. The big thing here, though, is some cars' brakes are going to be incredibly good, like the Koenigsegg here. Also, the Koenigsegg in the other class is going to be really good. I think it's the one. That thing probably brakes too much on the hypercar category. Hitting there. So you will have to tap the brakes hard. Like, for example, guys, one thing I did notice with this, which I don't think I mentioned in the other video, is let's say you actually want to like barely tap the brakes. If you barely tap them like that, you're going to notice that you get no nitrous at all from it. It's also kind of odd. So you basically have to fully hit the brakes to get nitrous. So quick example, going around this turn here. So if I actually hit the brakes hard, you guys will see it go all the way up there. But if you actually use the nitrous here and then barely tap the brakes, so you can still slow down 150. So you guys will see me slowing down. No nitrous is going up. So that is probably going to be the biggest drawback with this perk, though, is like, yes, you obviously are going to get more nitrous back when braking. The only issue with that, though, is most of the time, or even sometimes when racing, you're probably not going to be hitting your brakes incredibly hard around certain corners. Now, one way you can also get away with this, though, guys, I was thinking about is, yeah, you probably don't want to, like, barely tap on the brakes. Like, for example, here, doing 160, tapping on the brakes a bit. I am slowing down, I'm not gaining any nitrous. Now, one way you could probably fix that is, well, probably go as fast as you possibly can when hitting the corner. So let me do that here. So a good example of this is probably go a bit too fast approaching certain corners. If you're driving a car with good brakes, I would say one of the better ways to get nitrous is probably going to be in this aspect. So here's a good example. So slamming my brakes here, you guys will notice you'll get more nitrous there. And then you'll probably most likely be going just fast enough to get around that corner at a decent speed. The only issue with this, though, is you might sometimes slow down too much and most likely lose speed around it. And then, boom, you're probably going to end up losing your overall time in that event trying to gain more nitrous back. So I feel like in some ways, though, it's probably going to be a very situational perk. Like, for some odd reason on the highway, I was actually like, you know what? Maybe Resourceful is going to be incredibly good because you are finding yourself braking a lot harder in certain areas. Like if a car pulls out in front of you, which we all know that happens the way these AI drive. Now, if you are driving on a racetrack right here, guys, for example, a great way to do this, probably going to brake hard on a turn like this there. Slowing down enough, so you'll get half your nitrous back, which is good. The only issue I'm finding with this, though, is are you really going to have to brake that hard in certain corners? Like, you're not always going to be going incredibly fast on most straightaways. Sometimes you might actually hit the brakes not as hard as before, so you're not going to get any nitrous back in it. Now the thing about this though is I did show this when testing it out on the highway that going higher speeds is probably going to be the better way to use Resourceful. Like, yeah, you probably could run this on a racetrack, which I would say a lot of players are like, you know what? Wouldn't it make more sense if you are braking more on a racetrack, because that way you'll get more nitrous back in the corners? Which, you know, in reality would probably make a lot more sense, because braking in a straightaway probably wouldn't. The thing about this though is you will have to make sure you are braking that car hard. Like, a good example of this, guys, using my nitrous right now. So barely touching that there. So now what's kind of odd though is I barely touched the brake, and I went up way more nitrous that time when barely hitting the brake there. Kind of odd how this actually works. You know what? Let me test it out again. So barely touching the brake there, nothing. So it's almost like a threshold of how much brake force you have to put on that. Let's try it again. So that's very light there, slowing down, nothing. We get rid of this. Let me try this here. So hitting it a little more force. So that's basically the force there to get the nitrous up faster. So it does work really well. It's just the thing about this though is if you guys aren't really hard on the brakes, so like if you barely tap them, or you're a bit slower on tapping the brakes, which honestly I can see that. On a racetrack, probably slamming the brakes down in certain cars isn't a great idea because it will slow you down more. Sure, you're probably going to get more nitrous hitting the brake harder, but let's be real. You are most likely trying to keep that speed up, so slamming that down isn't the best way to do it. Make sure you guys hit the brake down enough to get that threshold, which is right about there. So I would say it's almost 3/4 down on the PS5 controller getting that to actually activate. If you barely touch it, like right there slowing down, you get nothing. Let me fly around this corner here and try it again. And on the straightaway here around 3/4 again, you guys will see how fast it actually goes up. So it is probably going to depend on how hard you guys are actually braking on the racetrack. I would say if you actually want the most benefit from it, the best way I found to do this though is to most likely aim for around 3/4 on that brake button. That way you actually get the most nitrous out of it. And that way you don't actually have to slam the nitrous or like, you know, slam that brake button down all the way to actually get it. Then in return slamming the nitrous down to get your speed back up. That way you're probably going to be braking a little bit less hard than you would be before. And you're also going to be getting nitrous back being on 3/4 of the button on the PS5 controller, or like, you know, any controller for that matter using L2 there. So on this straightaway right here, guys, let's hit it again. So 3/4 on the button. It's going to be slightly better again, getting me to around halfway. Now the big thing here is again going to be your overall speed. So like doing around 250 miles an hour in like a racing car or even like a Alpha GP. And on top of that, using like a hypercar is probably the best way to get the most nitrous. That way you're actually going to be using more here. Let me do it here. So 240, guys, 3/4 on that brake button. So it got all the way down to 35 miles an hour, getting me above halfway, so it's decent. Again, guys, I feel like it's going to be really situational. Like, are a lot of players going to need it? Are you actually going to be braking that hard around the corners? One of the other ways I also thought about this, though, is let's say you are looking for something like Resourceful to have on the vehicle. That way it is at least going to help you. Maybe run something like Pure and Frenetic, then add this to like 2 or 3 of the parts. That way at least you are going to have the perk on that vehicle to at least help overall with like the nitrous. Because we all gotta admit, yes, we are all going to be braking in one way or another. So at least you're going to be getting some type of nitrous boost back from it. Overall though, guys, I would like to know your thoughts on Resourceful in the comments below. Sure, it is probably going to be a lot better going higher speeds. Do you think it is useful on some of the racetracks?